Okay. Now, I want you to imagine that you're sitting in a chair in the center of a room and you're surrounded by your peers. All right? The peers. And the boss guy or her is kind of a little away from you, but that individual just lays into you, talks to you, it just fillets you like a fish. You're not going to make it in this business. You don't know enough. You're lazy. You don't think hard enough. You're never going to make it. Now, how would you feel? Wrong answer. Okay. So, supposedly. Okay, come on, stretch it, Steve. Help me here. All right. Right. Mostly, we don't like to be attacked, correct? Especially in front of all my peers. And you're listening to all this, and that hurts. Okay, that exact same scenario, except standing behind you is your spouse if you're married, and a good friend or two good friends. And they're not touching you except they each have a hand on your shoulder. Now, the same verbal barrage hits you. But how would that differ than the first time?
Doesn't have the impact.
Exactly, Michael. It would still hurt, correct? But not as badly. There is something about us that if we have someone that we can connect to, that we think is in our corner, mentally, vocationally, religiously, psychologically, physically, it makes life not so traumatic, right? It makes those impossible days not so impossible. Why? Because we're hardwired to work together. We're hardwired for community. What is a community? Technically speaking, it's a group of people, right? But you can be with a group of people in an airport and not be a community. You can be a group of people in a mall and not be a community. Technically, a community is a group of people that have shared interest, a shared cause, a shared focus, a group of people that somehow feel that they belong together. Now, that can take a lot of different faces, correct? Scott, I think, I've been out of town the last couple of weeks, but Scott talked about our church family. And we're going to touch on that and the importance of that again in just a few moments. I think Steve Autry last week talked about family, correct? And can be another very important community. But depending upon how specific or how loosely you define the words, a community could be a political party, it could be a nation, it could be a country, it could be a city, it could be a vocation, it could be a neighborhood. It could be a lot of different things, a club, a group of people with a hobby, or whatever. And so technically, that's what a community is. Now, we want to be part of a group that makes us feel like that we're making a difference in humanity. Every one of us, I think, has the need within us to feel that when we leave this earth, somehow we have left it better than when we got on the scene. It gives us purpose. Now, that's nice to say, but if you really get very specific, it's important to really talk about community unless you talk about loneliness, because they're two sides of the same coin, really. And I think Scott probably played for you the video, correct, from Murthy, our Surgeon General, about, okay, we're going to review that very briefly, a little of it, and add to it. I want you to look at this. Loneliness harms both individual and societal health. About 1 in 2 Americans report feelings of loneliness. Young adults are almost twice as likely to report feeling lonely than those over 65. This was really interesting to me. simply because I would think if there was a demographic that would really be lonely, it would be those over 65. But that's not true. Now, that's very ironic. We're going to come back to that in a moment. As far as the physical and mental health risk of loneliness, this is what we're talking about. First of all, cardiovascular disease and stroke. This research is fascinating to me. Look at this. 16 independent studies show that poor social relationships, that's isolation, poor social support, loneliness, associated with 29% increase in the risk of heart disease and 32% increase risk of stroke. Now that's significant, very significant. Dementia, chronic loneliness, and social isolation can increase the risk of developing dementia by approximately 50% in older adults. That's huge. Anxiety and depression, loneliness and social isolation among children and adolescents increase the risk of depression and anxiety. We're going to come back to that in just a few moments. And premature death. More than a century of research shows that lacking social connection increases the risk of premature death. And I'm not talking about newborns. I'm talking about all of us who should have a lifespan of X amount of years if we take care of ourselves and not accidents, whatever, right? But it increases it 60%. That's very, very interesting, at least to me, significant. Want to get more specific? Health impact comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Think about that. A lot of us would never smoke, but yet we're putting ourselves in situations perhaps of our own making, maybe not, but maybe because we're isolated. Drinking 6 alcoholic drinks a day, the same impact on your health, and even greater than the risk associated with obesity and physical activity as far as cardiovascular disease and that kind of thing. Okay, now, why are we so lonely? Why are we so lonely? Well, today we're connected more digitally than ever before, correct? Yet, even post-pandemic, and that Surgeon General's report came out, God originally called it to my attention in May of 23, this year. We are more isolated, more alone than even before the pandemic. What is wrong? What's going on with this mess? Well, let's talk a little bit about technology. Technology has done amazing things, correct? It's a window on the world. I kind of think of it as the modern day circus. You know, why do people used to go to the circus? Well, they could see things in a circus that they couldn't see anyplace else, right? But with a click of a button, a soldier can watch his child being born halfway across the world, correct? It's a window on the world. And that can be a good thing. Technology has affected the way we live, the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we socialize, basically the way we do everything. Now, technology can do a lot of things, but there are some things technology cannot do. Anna, would you come help me a minute? Okay. Anna and I are tight. Okay. Now, Anna, I want you to give me a hug, okay? Okay. You can't do that digitally. Anna and I text a lot, and we talk on the phone a lot. Some of you probably do too. But you don't get to do this. You don't get to do this. Thank you, sweetheart. Perfect. Some very interesting research has been done as far as touch is concerned. Following World War I, obviously many babies orphaned, and some would seem to thrive and others did not. Well, this is something you would never do, determined to do this or setting out to do this, but some studies started being done about why some of these babies would thrive and others would not. And all the babies, Biddy Mae's nodding, some of you too that work with children and pets and whatever, they started kind of doing a little bit of research as to why. All the babies were fed, all the babies were warm, all the babies were clothed, all the babies were kept dry, all those things. But yet you had some that would thrive and some that would not. It came down to touch. The babies that would thrive were in orphanages where there was enough personnel to go around so that these caregivers could hold and rock and love on these babies. The ones that did not thrive were the ones where there was not that personnel for whatever reason. Of course, after World War I, a lot of different research came out in different areas, places where you could control the environment. I think one of the most fascinating ones had to do with rhesus monkeys. You know, a lot of research done on, and you could take a baby rhesus monkey and put it in a cage, and you have 2 wire surrogates, kind of shaped like monkeys, not really. Okay, one of the wire surrogates just had a bottle attached to it. That was it, just a bottle full of milk. The other wire surrogate didn't have any, no food, no milk attached to it, but it was covered in a soft fabric. Now, what do you think 100% of the time those baby monkeys did? They would go feed on the wire, but immediately when they had had their fill, they'd go back to the cloth. And it didn't matter if it was just a lump. The cloth was not hugging it back. It was showing it no affection. It was doing absolutely nothing. But there was the difference in that physical touch, which was so important. As far as the impact of technology on, oh, there we go. Where am I? Okay, we're here. Whoop, oh, I'm way gone. Where, oh, talk amongst yourselves. Okay, oh, there we are. Okay, now, let me get back here. All right, as far as the impact on social connection is concerned, social isolation decreases performance, productivity, engagement in schools, workplaces, places of worship, organizations. Okay, that part you have. Now let's move on where I need to be, and that's the impact of technology. And when you're talking about technology, there is a plethora of things, depending upon how you want to define it. Certainly the smartphone, correct? It also includes AI, it includes computer, it includes working from home, it includes basically television set, anything that involves any type of technology. Now I want you to look at I'm gonna have to go over here so I can read it. Look at the numbers on this thing. Americans spend an average of 6 hours per day on digital media. I kind of did some weird math on that, and the way I figure it out, if the average American spends 5 hours a day and drops the remote while they're spending the time, and they live and do that for about 65 years, in other words, they don't start that when they're first born, but as soon as they're old enough, they live maybe into their 80s or whatever. That equals about 11 years of life. Now, you see, no one's going to tell us that, right? Because that doesn't pay, that doesn't make any money, that doesn't sell ads. Which one of us would mortgage 11 years of our lives? I mean, just voluntarily give it away. Yet, as Americans, we do it every day. 85% of Americans 18 and older say they go online on a daily basis. 31% report going online almost constantly. 48% say they go online several times a day. 6% go online about once a day. The percentage of teens, and you're talking about adults 18 and over, you're talking 13 to 17-year-olds here who say they're online almost constantly, has doubled since 2015. That has some kind of impact, don't you think? Now, certainly there are benefits to technology. I'm not going to shortcut it. We have a saying in our conference, you've heard us say it before. It's one of our mantras. Anything God makes good, Satan can make bad. You've heard us say that. You know, Satan's the father of lies and distortions. He creates nothing. He just messes up good stuff. If God can make something good, Satan can make a distorted version of it and a harmful version of it. Honesty, distorted, becomes dishonesty, right? Love, which is self-lust, distorted, becomes lust, which is selfish and wrong even in a marriage, correct? If you take it to the end conclusion, even our very best personality characteristics, when they're distorted, become the characteristics about every one of us that are the most destructive part of us, yours truly included. And so certainly there is a good side to technology. It had existed before COVID, but it really hit full blown in COVID. We were able to worship digitally, correct? Connect with each other when we could no other way. And certainly it serves a beautiful purpose for people who are marginalized in some way, for people who have mobility issues in some way, or they cannot get to social groups. And so it doesn't matter whether it's a worship service, whether it's a Zoom class, or if it's a support group. These can be very wonderful by offering resources, encouragement, whatever an individual needs digitally. But remember the mantra. There definitely is a downside to that. And the downside to technology occurs when it interferes with person-to-person interaction. That's crucial. When it monopolizes our time, and we're going to talk about how it does that, and as a result, reduces social connection, and many times when that happens, believe it or not, it diminishes self-esteem and obviously increases loneliness. Now, frequent phone use is one of the greatest problems for every one of us. You know, this little thing right here, it's an incredible dopamine dispenser. I'm going to talk about that more in just a moment. Some people have compared it to a modern-day hypodermic needle because it can have the same effect. Now, does it mean it's all bad? No. I like my cell phone. It blesses me. But like anything else in my life, it can also destroy me or destroy what I want to accomplish in life, what I want to do. It can. The cell phone, very interesting. I think probably one of the most harmful ways is with parent-child interaction. And I'm not talking little children necessarily. With grown children, I can be guilty of this the same way you might be if you have little children, right? Or with a friend. It's very tempting, isn't it, to be talking to someone and doing this, multitasking. People like us to listen to them with our eyes. And when we are dual tasking, multitasking with the phone, we're really not doing that. We're disengaged to some extent, correct? Have you ever been in the phone in a conversation with someone and they're working on their phone and they're maybe texting or checking or whatever? How do you feel? Have you ever been that person? Uh-huh. I have. It kind of like, it makes you kind of like feel like, well, you're not important. You know, my agenda, what I want to see on this thing, what's going on in the world is more important than you are. That's not at all what we're about. Now, let's talk a minute about social media. Oh, sorry I forgot this part. I'm just human, forgive me. According to one study, 71% of teens report spending 3 hours or more a day using technology, excluding technology to do their schoolwork. That's a bunch. That's a bunch. Okay, what's the impact of social media? Let's look at this. 80% of adults use social media, okay? 85% of teens, 13 to 17, use social media. Teens use all social media platforms, and that includes Twitter, that includes Facebook, that includes whatever, I don't know all of them, but anything, any social platform leads to increased depression, anxiety, poor body image, loneliness, and the comparison trap. Years ago, decades ago, some interesting research came out about women and magazines. And you can take women, 1, 10, whatever, and put them in a room with a stack of magazines and let them thumb through, and body image tanks. The only difference today is we do not have those magazines, or those individuals did not have the magazines 24/7. Those magazines were not the first thing that people looked at when they got up in the morning. They weren't the thing they looked at noon, and they weren't the things that they looked at right before they went to bed at night. Today, with digital technology, we carry around these flickering magazines, and we can check it all the time. How in the world are we supposed to show up and feel good about ourselves when there is the constant drumming in our head of people that look better than we do, they have more fun than we do, they go better places than we do, they have more friends than we do, they have more money than we do, their children act better than our children do. There's no way. The digital world gives us this kind of crystal ball. And any time, any day, we can look into our ball and see what our friends are doing. A running commentary. FOMO. Anybody hear of that? FOMO? Oh, okay. Heath, what's FOMO?
Fear of missing out.
Oh, you got it. It's huge among millennials, those younger than millennials, probably a little older than millennials. For those of you my age, I had to, what? You know, at our ages, if we're home at 9 o'clock, that's exactly where we want to be. Missing out. Okay, we're good. Fear of missing out. It's profound. The fear of missing out. And it doesn't matter whether it's real or not, it's a perceived reality. And if it's real to me, it's my reality, right? And therefore, when I go to online, to all the social platforms, again, I see people that are my friends that are socializing without me, people that are supposed to like me that didn't include me. And I make a post and I check back to see how many people liked it. And if they don't like it, my self-esteem goes in the tank. And if somebody friends somebody else and they don't friend me, the same thing can happen. Not always, but it can. The fear of missing out. Yes.
Wondering too, when you talk about in days gone by, and maybe still, there's the fear of public speaking, okay? And we can be amongst friends and still have that fear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but when you have the throw tomatoes at you, you know, and
Right.
stuff like that. You know, it can take on a whole nother level.
And the bullying.
Because of the anonymity involved.
Absolutely.
Things that we would not think of doing, like I say, throwing tomato at somebody because of a bad word,
Right.
you know, or
Right.
you know, and but
Mob mentality. Mentality. We're gonna.
But that low
Yes.
level
Yes.
tension, you know, even though
Yes.
you don't consciously think about when you post,
Right.
that you're opening yourself up.
Right. But you could
It's there,
be.
I think it wears.
It does wear. It does wear. And it cuts both ways.
Yes.
It really does. Now, I think the social platforms can be very beneficial. They can help us stay in touch with people that we're interested in, and we want to know what they're doing and that kind of thing. But I'm one of these individuals that I spend a lot of my time working with the flip side of that. Do you understand what I'm saying? The people that feel less than, and they're shooting themselves in the foot a lot, but they continue to expose themselves to social media that's going to make a situation worse. And you can try to reason with them with that, but they're going to have to change their own habits with that. So, oh, by the way, we were at a retreat last week, and one of the speakers, you remember, said, Brenda, you remember what that slide said, John? Yesterday I unfriended all the perfect people. You know, I think one of the favorite Christmas cards we ever got, and this was way back when people really sent Christmas cards and family letters. Not many people do that anymore, but way back when. And you know, you'd read these letters and you'd be thrilled for these people, you know, but at the same time, everything looks so perfect, you know, and you wonder. And I think one of the favorite ones, I don't remember who it was, that couple. Anyway, good sense of humor. They wrote a newsletter about how their oldest didn't get arrested that year, and they were so proud. And their 13-year-old finally finished 4th grade, and they were thrilled to death. And the 12-year-old daughter wasn't pregnant, and they were so thankful. I mean, it was tongue in cheek, but it was so refreshing. I said, hey, these people are real, just like me. You know, I've kind of come up with a rule of thumb, and like I tell, no one died and made me boss. But you know, when you work with stuff, you try to figure out a way maybe to constructively and fairly counter all of this. And so I'm going to throw this out there. You accept, reject it, or modify, as I like to say. Post good things about yourself if you want to. I mean, that's fine. There are people that love you that want to know. But for every good thing you post about you and what's going on in your life, and that's good, you don't have to post anything negative, but I would ask you to post something inspiring, something lifted that will lift people up. And there's, I mean, it's everywhere. A quotation, a scripture, a devotional thought, something. In other words, when people think about you, they're going to see that balance. You see, and that will help. And the other mantra that I like, in the morning, don't open Facebook or any form of social media until you first open the book. That's priority. That's where you start. And if you don't have time to look on social media after you've spent time in the book, that's okay. You know, things are still going to happen. The world will still turn. People are still going to have triumphs, and they're going to have tragedies. But I think bottom line is, At this retreat last week, I was just looking around the room at the people and their stories, and even the lives that look so perfect are not. Everybody is fighting their own personal battle in some way. And I think that if, as Christian people, if we can do anything at all to try to enter into the human conversation and the hurtful conversation, maybe, of real life, it might help. It might help. Just a thought. Well, why is this the case? What's the deal? I know you probably get tired of me talking about the science, but I'm one of these people, and I was probably horrendous to rear, because my parents would say, don't do that, and I would say, why? And because I said so, didn't work after I was about 10. I'm embarrassed, but then God, has a sense of humor, so I had to rear a couple just like me. They wanted to know the why. Why is that the case? Well, we could sit here and say, don't do this because it has this effect, or it has this effect, it has this effect. Why is that? Okay, I'm going to give you the why, because there really is a science behind community and the amount of loneliness and the effect it has on our brains, okay? You've heard me flirt before with two chemicals in the brain, two of my favorites, dopamine and norepinephrine, dopamine and serotonin. Norepinephrine kind of dates both of them, but nevertheless, okay. Now, dopamine is the neurotransmitter. It's a chemical in the brain that has to do with happiness, it has to do with reward, and it has to do with motivation, right? Serotonin is another chemical in the brain that has to do with our moods, our highs and our lows, our appetite. So if you're in serotonin crisis, you're probably not going to eat a whole lot or eat way too much. Okay, that's the way that stuff. And our sleep patterns. Okay, now, a healthy relationship with the digital world depends upon how we balance those two chemicals. Now, this is the why. This is what's going on up here. As they say, it's really not rocket science. To me, it's fascinating, but it might not be to you. Just bear with me. I'll move on in a minute. Okay, now, every time we get on this thing, all right, and we look at this, there's a little spurt of dopamine that is released. It's a buzz. It's a high. It's that feel-good chemical, right? Reward, motivation, remember, happiness. Okay, but the problem is it doesn't last very long. And it doesn't matter what I'm looking at. Dopamine loves shock, surprise, and novelty. Every time I look at this and see an email, Gmail, whatever, I say, I haven't seen that. And so there's a little buzz, right? The problem is the buzz doesn't last. But the body likes the buzz, the high. And so what happens? Well, if I don't, what I do is I continually check it throughout the day. I carry it around, my dopamine dispenser. The problem is, it doesn't matter how often I check it, there's no amount of dopamine that is ever going to completely satisfy. It's going to die out quickly. And so it spurs more and more and more. In fact, science says the best way to determine how addictive a behavior is, or a substance or anything, is to try to chart how much dopamine is released when that's engaged in. It's correlation there. Okay, but it's worse than that. In that, eventually, it doesn't take long, it takes more visits here to get the same buzz. The addictive cycle. And so what happens is we spiral down into this vortex, right, of technology, seeking more and more and more. Now, an excess of either of these two chemicals can sabotage us. Now that's the interesting part, at least to me, the excess. If, because of the media, I can overuse any kind of technology, then what is really happening is that I'm decreasing my physical activity, correct? Dopamine, here I am, probably interfering with sleep habits. It's causing really isolation, and believe it or not, loneliness, anxiety, and depression. All because I'm doing this, right? And while I'm doing this and the dopamine's firing, what is being neglected? The serotonin. The chemical that the brain produces when we are having social interaction with other people that we love or we like or we have connection with. It decreases the amount of time we usually exercise. It decreases time outside. All those things that create the serotonin that regulate our moods, our depression, our highs and our lows, that stuff isn't happening. And so what happens is you end up then, again, as this vortex continues, you end up with irritability, you end up with more anxiety, more depression, right? Because we're not creating that chemical that we need to stabilize our moods. Now, does that make sense? Some of you are looking at me like I just got dropped on my head. Okay, some of you, okay, good. We got the young ones that are with me, so that's good. All right. Okay, and so you see what the increased screen time can do. Now, this is where we are each accountable for ourselves. You decide for yourself. I'm not your judge and jury. Deliver me. I don't want that job. I'm not smart enough. I don't know enough. How much time can you spend? How much time do you want to spend with technology each day? You have to decide. You have to decide what the balance is for you. Is it cutting down on social time? Is it cutting down on exercise? Is it cutting down on your interaction? Is it cutting down with going outside, with health? Is it cutting down on the things that are helping you be or are interfering with you being all that you can be, all that you really want to be? Or is it kind of nipping that whole thing, cutting it off? Now, we're going to change directions one more time. Okay, I've got 10 minutes. I'm going to let you out of here on time. I know Jerry would say restudy the miracle passages, but nevertheless. Okay. Okay, now, hi there. I love you. I'm crazy about you, you know. Okay, all right.
You did a good job with the material I put together, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. All right, now, okay, this is great participation again, but you don't have to talk. I just want you to look a minute, okay? Now, I want you to look at the line that would be on your left, okay? That's your, we're going to call it a control line. And now I want you to look at the other three lines. And I want you to decide which of the three is the same, which one is the same length as the control on your left. How many of you would say A? How many of you would say B? How many of you would say C is the same length? Okay. Now, that's very interesting. And you're right. In 1921, there was a Hungarian psychologist by the name of Solomon Asch. And he kind of was doing some pioneering work on conformity and compliance. And oh my, the research after that had gone into mob psychology stuff and prison psychology stuff. And, you know, once you kind of open that Pandora's box, it just goes a lot of places. But the original experiment was this. He had a group of individuals. Usually they're out of college, they're in college, they volunteer for some professor study, right? And they may get paid a penny an hour, I don't know, whatever. Okay, now what he did with this group, however large it was, he divided them into groups, of 8. 8. All right? Now, 7 of the 8 were called Confederates. In other words, they were in on what was going on. Initially, he told them all they were going to do a sight study, all right, a vision test. Okay, that's fair. I'll sign up for a vision test. But he called 7 of the 8 in, of each group, and told them that they were to decide ahead of the experiment, before they brought in number 8, which line they were going to say matched the control line. All right, you get what's going on? They were then put in a row of chairs, and you had the 7 Confederates, all right? And then you had the one individual that was really being looked at. But no one told them. All right, so as far as this guy knows, we're all equal here. We're all in the same boat. We're doing this. Okay, of the 15 original trials, I think 12, 13, hang on, I can tell you exactly, 12, all right, 12 of the 15 trials, the Confederates gave the wrong answer. Of 12 of the 15, right? And by the way, a side note, there was a control group. And the control group was just the experimenter and the diagrams and one person to see how many times he would choose incorrectly. Everybody got that, so you had a control group. You go, okay, all right. Well, it was very interesting because in those trials where that 12 of those trials, the Confederates gave the wrong answer, 3/4 of the individuals that didn't know anything about it complied. They agreed. Fascinating thing to read about, because then they interviewed them why you said that. And what was going on was you had 6 or 7 people in front of them saying, well, no, it's C, or no, it's B. You know, and B. Well, here I am at the last one. Am I going to just say, no, what's wrong with you guys? 3/4 of the time, they went along with it, even when it went against what they were really thinking. In the control group, only 1% of the time did the individual give the wrong answer. And then, like I said, there was this whole idea of compliance and mob psychology went all over the place. The point I want to make tonight is this. Anything God makes good, Satan makes bad, right? Community is not exempt from that. It's just not. There are some communities that we are probably parts of where individuals share our values and they share our morals and our goals. We have the common cause. We're really united, right? And sometimes that's not the case. Maybe it's not the case in our jobs. Maybe it's not the case even in our families. Maybe it's not the case in our neighborhoods, even with a group of friends. Certainly, we should do the best we can to be a good influence on these people. I'm not negating that. But what I do want to say that when we have a choice about our communities and we choose the members of that community, I think it's really important that we think twice. We think really hard and long about the people that share our values and our goals and our purpose in life. You know, God knew this. You know, he's the greatest psychiatrist that ever lived, psychologist. He made us. All of this is kindergarten stuff below to him. He knows exactly how we're hardwired. Why do you think he told Israel to stay away from the heathen nations? Because he didn't love them? No, he knew the influence of community. And the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, is threaded with stories of people that didn't pay attention and nations that didn't pay attention. In our era, we have the church. Jesus knew we'd need that. This Christian psychology, by the way. He knew, what is the church? A group of broken, fallen people like me, maybe like you, that are very different. But we come together with a common goal, a common cause. Even as different as we might be in so many areas of our life, we have a common goal. And we come together to draw strength from each other, to grow with each other, and to help each other. You know, Jesus knew we'd need that. It wasn't by accident. And I didn't hear Scott. I hate that I didn't get to, but I'm sure he emphasized this. You know, there is something about coming to this place, to a community of faith. I don't care if we have to get up earlier. I don't care if we don't eat breakfast. If the kids are fussy. I don't know. That there's something about it. I remember when my kids were small. They were 19 months apart, 2 little boys. And I remember one day I was just worn out. And I told Mother, which was a mistake, I told my mother, I said, she was born in 1919, by the way, you get the picture. I said, Mother, I'm worn out. Sundays just aren't worth it. Because I get up early, I get them there, one of them spits up on me, the other one poops in his pants. You know, I don't hear the sermon, I don't hear the class, and I go home and they're fussy and they're hungry and I'm exhausted. I'm worn out. I don't want to do this anymore. And that little bitty woman looked at me with steel in her eyes and she says, don't you quit. Don't you quit. I don't care how tired you are. I don't care what you don't get out of that service. I don't care what you think. This is who you are. This is what you're going to live for. These are your people. And even if you don't get anything out of that, you need to be where that community of faith is. I guess as I bring this down to a close, it falls on every one of us to decide what our legacy is going to be. What do we want to be remembered for? And then it is up to us to choose communities that are made up of people that will help us get there. Because I guarantee you, if we don't make that deliberate effort, the world's going to find a way. Satan will find it. He'll define it for us, and he's not going to announce when he does. He's not. So I end with this. If I could tell you that there was a pill that it could increase longevity, reduce the chances of anxiety and depression, help us heal better when we're wounded, decrease loneliness, and help our immune system, make us more productive at work and as friends and as people and our families. And if that pill was always available and it was free, I think we'd jump on it, right? We would. There are several things that we can do, and I'm going to do this address loneliness epidemic, inventory where we spend our time, spend 15 minutes a day reaching out to someone we love. These are simple. Pay attention to people when talking to them. We've already talked about that. Listen to them with your eyes. That's powerful. Find moments to serve. Again, Jesus knew what he was talking about. He came to serve, not to be served. And take time to reground. This is what I've just been talking about. Find your people. Find your community of faith. Sometimes we disconnect because we feel less than. Connect with the people that know who you are, that share your love of God, that are trying, just like you're trying. All righty. Thank you.